deal with burst damage. So even with that heal over time composition, they were able to keep Cassia alive for most of it, and that's mainly also thanks to these binds.
Map number 2.
We have Warhead Junction!
Picked by CE.
Dret, don't you feel at home right now?
I guess I do. I don't think this is going to be played exactly like we see out of the North American scene.
Yeah.
This is going to be really interesting. I expected if a Warhead Junction pickup came in, it would be for BTG with more of the surprise factor than it would be that of CE.
I just imagine what those two teams can do with a bunch of nukes in their arsenal. We already saw 34 kills in the last one. This could be a wild, wild one. Warhead Junction, big map of course, so we would expect globals here to shine. We have seen, well actually when we're looking at the western region, we would expect globals to be a big deal. But when we talk about China, most of the time it's really the team fight potential that we have. NA focusing lately way more on boss control. That seems to be the one go-to, where we also saw Roll20 at BlizzCon force a new 4.5-minute record on the map. So I'm actually a little bit curious to see which way CE leans.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking the exact same thing. Like, how much flavor do we see towards that playstyle with the hyper focus into one lane, getting the early win? If we see any immediate, kind of taking a flavor out of that playstyle, and with the changes we've seen on this current patch, I immediately go Illidan and Tyrael are going to be very, very high value, and then also Zeratul.
Yes,
Zeratul is an actual great pickup on this map.
Here's another point. CE picked the map.
Yes.
So the one big criticism that I had of China, and especially of CE, was that they failed miserably at BlizzCon to adapt to the North American strategies on this map and on Braxis. That they didn't do their homework. They were always in a spot where they were heavily surprised whenever they played against the Western team on Warhead Junction of how boss control worked in, even when the compositions that were played with heavy focus on mercenary camps and clear raids indicated already what was happening, and even when other teams already fell to that strategy. I really want to see if them picking Warhead Junction just simply means that they went back to the drawing board after that, looked at the map with a bit of a new approach and said like, huh, we can actually learn something from the way that the Western teams play this map, and we're going to try and adopt it right now when we face off against the Chinese team. If that happens, I would be the biggest fan of them.
And I think if we do see that, it doesn't necessarily have to happen with the exact same draft priority, right?
Yeah.
We can see different draft priority as long as it's maybe the same draft intent.
Yeah, exactly. Like the thought process behind it.
So the Dahaka pickup for BTG, that's not surprising. We talked about globals wanting to be valued. With the boss control in mind, I was going to say the higher Vala.
Yeah.
So this is a situation where, because of the map, in order to match the Greymane, we've talked about the Greymane into the Vala, but this is a moment where you must pick the Vala of that high priority to make sure you get the Q build and you can trade boss for boss versus CE.
And Greymane still does really well when it comes to simply taking Mercams, of course. Vala has been a high priority pick in all of those situations simply because of Monster Hunter on level 1. That's another thing where we still have to see if they actually commit to that build, since we have seen a lot of multi-shot hybrid builds so far.
Good call.
And we have Uther banned out first of all. Now Lucio, of course, with the heal over time. Uther now being banned to make sure that there's not his weakness simply negated by the burst heal that we have on the side of Uther.
On the note of the build of which Vala goes, I feel like if we don't see them commit to the kind of Q build playstyle, I would really like them to see them move into a bit more of the double support, like with an Ariel, and get kind of a tri-lane pressure onto the map. It's very different than, again, that kind of racing playstyle, but if both teams avoid that all-in playstyle, suddenly the tri-lane that's very oppressive up through the bottom lane, cycling up towards top, could be something BTG can easily rely on to gain an upper hand.
Garrosh being banned out right now. CE. I mean, Garrosh can always be a huge game changer here, and we've seen it a few times. He was prioritized towards the end of the group stage, particularly. Not only by Roll20, which was to be expected, but given Justin's preference of the hero, but also by quite a few teams. Even Fnatic picking him, even though in the past they stated several times that they feel he has glaring weaknesses that are too easy to exploit. But how is CE going to approach this right now? I'm really curious about this. Greymane is already a good start if you want to have the boss control. ETC allows you to go for the stage dive potential. Here comes another potential global with, or one global for sure, Falstad. ETC could be the second one if they commit to stage dive. And Karazim is one of the supports that is heavily favored in the Chinese region. Very aggressive, can jump into that backline. and you can always go for a blow-up comp here as well. So, falls that into that Dehaka. I mean, so far, it's a pretty well-rounded comp, but it's nothing that screams to me immediately, okay, this is the playstyle we're going to use.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say that it's also just vague enough as well that it can commit to that playstyle, or at least generally in that area.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as hyper-focused as we've seen North America's playstyle into it. But yeah, I agree with you. They can play a bit more, slower overall gameplay. But that says the exact opposite. Lieutenant Morales, Zarya, picked up for Beyond the Game. We are looking at what is likely going to be a 4-man siege with a Dehaka side soak into 2 lanes, and using the false ad to be able to match it now on the side of CE. And they have to ask themselves, how do we be able to stop this siege? Normally things like maybe a Gul'dan or a Chromie would come up as a way to just have hyper damage to stop it. Kel'Thas or Kel'Thuzad both do that very well here as well. But if CE says that they aren't concerned about the siege race, or you just Zeratul. Interesting choice to commit to Zeratul. It even then commits more towards that boss idea, but it shows that they have almost no fear of the siege threat now posed by BTG.
Yes, and that's something that was already an issue for them when they played at BlizzCon. And the one problem that I have is, I actually like that comp if they hit level 10. The problem is, do you hit level 10?
Yeah.
Because if BTG plays this right, they will siege hard and way earlier than that. And if you don't have the Gust, if you don't have the threat of a mosh pit, or at least a stage dive to have a second global available and play around the opponent, and Void Prison, then good luck defending against a very heavy siege.
I know we've been questioning, some of the talent choices of the last game, but on this one in particular, that if we see Beyond the Game go into Q build on Zarya at level 1, it really takes away from the strategy. It is not by any means, not like you can't get away with it, but the siege race potential drops so much so that all of this maybe kind of concern and lack of respect that I feel like CE gave goes out the window, and it's back to more even footing.
For me, it's really Vala's build. I really want to see Monster Hunter right now. I want to see that commitment.
I think they'll commit. The composition to me says that that is the playstyle they're going to go.
Yeah, but then again, we saw in the last game a composition that really screams, hey, I want to have a symbiote build. I have 3 heroes that completely benefit from that style, and we're going to brawl. And then Abathur says, you know what, we're going to split push today. So sometimes they, I don't know, from a Western perspective, they sometimes just miss that thought process behind it. There's a little bit of like miscommunication, it feels. I'm really, really curious how BTG plays this, because this, if played correctly, is pretty frightening.
Yeah, and I indicated talking about maybe going with that 3-man hyper carry siege, and really Beyond the Game did commit to that, but rather than doing it as a 1-1-3, they went with the 1-4 and relying on the Dehaka side soak. I would say that it's in the realm of possibility to make the transition out and not commit to a full 4-man push, but not too many heroes on that have enough independent wave clear, I feel like, to get away with being that solo lane representative. Yeah. For CE, though, with their composition being so 10-based, as we were talking about, it's stopping the siege and, more importantly, using the Zeratul to get picks and winning the Warhead and snowballing experience in that manner.
What I find really interesting is that given who chose the map, CE, the way more map-focused composition goes to BTG.
Yeah.
Like, it really seems way more that, like, if you would show me the 2 drafts and you ask me, okay, who picked the map, I would immediately go, yeah, BTG went for it.
Yeah, I agree. From beginning to end, other than the fact that, if they are in the second pick slot, they have to be, right? That's the only thing that you would be like, oh, wait, this doesn't add up. I'm not putting it past CE, though. I feel like they have very much shown to be a growing team here at this tournament, and internationally very, very respected out of the Chinese region. So I'm having hope, but I agree with you. It does seem, I want to use the word stubborn, maybe?
Yeah, and I feel it comes also a bit back to execution level. We know that CE just in paper has a stronger players. Aluful on Karazim, a win on the front line with ETC. We have Paradise on Zeratul, KTY on Falstead, and Shuyu once again on the auto attacker here, going straight for Greymane.
For Beyond the Game here with the Warhead Junction composition. A on Lucio, ST playing Vala, MJ on Lieutenant Morales, ZJZ on the Dehaka side soak, and 619, the man on the Zarya, is hopefully going to feel the heat. I believe, because of so much being catered towards the siege here, that's going to be the choice. But I have seen far stranger decision-making, not so much out of these teams, but I'm just saying in general with the siege approach on this map.
If China in particular has learned anything from the matches at BlizzCon, it has to be how you approach Warhead.
We're about to find out.
Yeah,
the big old question marks lingering.
Yeah, the question marks are lingering on Zarya, but we have at least our question regarding Vala already confirmed. It is indeed the Q build. So no multi-shot variations here, committing to Monster Hunter, and therefore the extra pressure against the camps on the map.
Q build Zeratul as a way to be able to defend, going for the reset there. That is not a Vorpal Blade, ladies and gentlemen, so this is going to be awesome. I am so stoked that we get a variation into Zeratul. This is something that has risen to power when looking at dealing with heavy melee and clumping compositions. I feel like it's a proper response. When I was concerned about the anti-siege, however they're going to make it, and I was so maybe concerned with that Zeratul, suddenly, I don't want to say it solves the problem, but it very much deals with it far better than what we'd normally see.
Yeah, and immediately a heavy commitment here in the mid lane. We see a foreman down to the bottom of the map. Both of the teams are racing, but BTG holds the early global here with the Haka at the top. So Falstad maybe split by CE to mirror that, and yes, flies to the top lane and tries to get it. So they get a bit of an advantage. Both of the teams are just simply saying, hey boys, let's skip the early game.
Yeah, they're going for the battle, but the interesting choice for CE is the fact that they volunteered towards the middle lane, which is not one of the boss lanes, which is now going to set them behind not necessarily an experience, but as this game moves on towards that boss control and all the warhead pressure we've been talking about, BTG is very much taking the reins of this game here, even though it seems even.
If anything, I would have expected them to at least try and hop to the top lane, but it feels a little bit like they didn't really expect BTG to do the same thing, and that's why they are saying, hey, we're going to go in the mid lane. This is what they least expect, so we're not going to be matching a 5 versus 5. Like, I don't know, but right now CE walks away with the situation where if they pick the bottom boss, they are in a great spot.
We see the attempt to fence here. Pressure out from Shu Yu onto ST, but he's going to be able to rebuttal right back there, vaulting in, but Fog of War is going to deter any more auto attack damage into that, but the siege is still real. Flank coming out from Wind, flight from KTY, pressure onto Lieutenant Morales there. MJ not having enough shields. He's going to be the first to drop. First blood for CE, but they are not out of this yet as 619 trying to abuse A's mobility. He will do so, but a power slide comes in. Win is going to lock down another, and 3 kills for CE. Make it a 4th here.
Yeah, that should definitely be a 4th. The Haka during all of this simply said, okay, boys, the fight's already lost. I'm going to try and get us at least some experience here. But this is still, in experience, it's still very even, but it already shows that BTG just doesn't really know when to move back here. I feel they got a lot, actually, just simply obliterating the fort, pushing the lanes out, and especially after they put the damage onto the tower, it was time to either move back or at least keep the Haka close enough that he moves in immediately. Losing Morales this quickly was an issue, but the bottom lane is still wide open. You get a boss, you have a few nukes, and all of a sudden you pressure keep. And by now, Zeratul, the Q build you talked about, after the Greater Cleave on 1, went straight into the Rending Cleave. So now we have the extra damage on that as well, so going full AoE damage here.
It's into the later stages of the game, you're going to be able to watch like a massive AoE rending damage, as you were talking about with that talent picked up. This being said, I will say for anybody at home, if you're the first time ever seeing Q build Zeratul, it's one of those do not try this at home type builds. It is not the... there's a reason it's not the standard, is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. But it really would help out in this case if you deal with heavy siege. So it's very situational, and it's cool to see that out of them. Like that instant adaptation of the build to try and mitigate some of the disadvantages that they have and weaknesses, compensating for that. It's pretty cool.
It does take away from what we do know as the 1 versus 1 of the Zeratul trade, though, into the Falstad, whereas normally you talk about lethality. Lethality up on mid, though, after that 2-man power slide. Lieutenant Morales is always the focus for CE, and whenever she drops, seems like there's always more to follow, Calder.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem that they have in this game now, and it really shows. First of all, on an individual skill base, CE is just stronger, and if you allow CE to go into these 5 versus 5 fights without getting punished at all. If you don't control the camps, then you are going to run in trouble. They need to cater to the strength of the composition and really start sieging up with some of the mercenary camps. Because if they allow for flanks like this to happen over and over again, CE is just going to take them apart in every single team fight.
It is one of those situations where with the BTG composition that they have, though CE didn't draft to kind of mirror the counter siege elsewhere, it doesn't mean that they can ignore the rotations they're out of CE. I mean, we are looking at a hindsight 2027 kills have happened, right? But I feel like normally when you draft this style of composition, it will still be able to pull ahead, but if your opponent's not willing to be able to fully respect and match you, you've got to be considering, you know, what happens if they get this collapse? How do we deal with this?
And that's the execution that we've been pointing out a bit earlier. CE is just for good reasons, the favorite in this series. And the draft might be very strong for the map when we're looking at BTG, but you still have to play it right. And you need to respect what your opponent has drafted and the strengths that overlap.
On level 7 there for the Zeratul, it in fact is going to be the Wormhole, so very different than Seeker in the Dark. Can always teleport back to your original target. Just makes me feel like old Zeratul when we see builds like this. Whereas Wormhole used to be the standard for anybody who didn't play Zeratul pre-rework. It's going to be 4 warheads that spawn onto the map. The boss already started for BTG, or CE, excuse me, down below. It's going to be picked up here. Timed perfectly with this objective. It's an immediate double pickup onto those warheads down below, rounding out the 10s. This is the moment for them to really kind of at least get a keep, I feel.
Yeah, they have, I mean, they can go for the warheads. They have the pressure at the bot lane right now. And also the bot lane is the one with the double warheads. So they can simply use Greymane and Kharazim to walk over with a boss and drop it. And the more time BTG spends up at the top lane, the rougher this is going to get. ETC is now moving in as well. So that's currently 2 nukes, that's 3 nukes actually are going to be used for this particular push, and BTG just can't outmatch this.
Keep in mind, when it comes to core, they have a Gust and a Void, which are 2 of the best sieging tools in the game, just purely off the isolation with threat back to from the core itself. They still have 2 warheads. CE has an opportunity to end this game before the 10 marks. There's going to be Warhead 1 dropped by BTG.
Yeah, but and CE is not using the nukes. They're not using the warheads. They have the 10. They're looking to end the game right here, and they have the level. They have the heroic abilities to pull it off. Here comes the first one. False that flies in. Gust is still available. Second nuke is down as well. They're going straight for the core. The boss is still ready, and it drops fast. They're trying to end the game.
Oh, that was a misclick.
All moving back, but he actually voids the core.
Not necessarily going to set them back from this game, but for anybody who was wondering how that may be meant to go is to clip only the members of BTG, not the core, so they can end the game. But it's still very clean as we see 7-0 in those kills. CE takes game number 2, now 1 away from sadly sending home BTG.
6.5 minutes. The combo BTG wasn't bad. They just didn't respect what CE had.
Yeah, just that Zeratul flank that collapsed up on bottom, it felt like it was just the momentum swing that was the breaking point. Sad to see that, that early into the game. But I feel like BTG, they can go back and look at that one and definitely see the moments to be able to adjust.
Yeah, I mean, they had a couple of opportunities there, and I think the pressure at the beginning worked actually in their favor. If they don't overextend, move back, and they say, guys, okay, once that we take a boss, once that we have a few warheads, we can really deal with this, and then we make our approach through the bot lane. I mean, we talked about how CE moved into the middle instead, and so didn't really have that added boss pressure in that situation. The problem for BTG really occurred when they not only lost 5 members at the bot lane, but then the same situation happened again in the middle where ETC gets a double power slide in. Morales falls within half a second, and then it's just all about trying to chase them down and get even more kills, and they ended up with 3 kills, so that was pretty brutal.
Yeah, and they did, they had the Lucio Lieutenant Morales double support with the Zarya, which we see in that kind of siege composition, but compared to what maybe you normally see in that, typically Lieutenant Morales has somebody who's a little bit more reliable on keeping her alive in those early skirmishes, and so it is a nice case of, CE capitalizing on what is, I don't want to call it a mismatch by any means, because it isn't. It's just more of a how do you want to approach that strategy. And Lucio would cater towards splitting the siege constantly, right, off the mobility, whereas anybody else keeps Lieutenant Morales alive a little bit better, but then they bring in the Zeratul and just clean shop. Every time MJ went down, everybody else followed.
Yeah, and the combo with Morales works perfectly if your opponent tries to push in very linearly from the front.
Yeah.
But we had, in every single one of the fights that happened, we had one hero that just broke the rules. We had either Falset flying down and attacking from behind with Zeratul immediately committing to the same target, or we had ETC doing the same thing. And one of the issues that existed on the side of BTG was that with them heavily committing to Zarya, they had very little CC that they could use, or peel in general they could use in that situation. There was no ETC that uses a face melt and gives you a few seconds of breathing room where you can just reposition in the fight and then take it.
Yeah, only like post 10 would Zarya be able to better deal with that, right? Maybe expulsion zone, Morales hang out and just be like, thanks for the peel for a little bit longer. Try and keep yourself alive. The one thing for me that stood out with play for CE on that map, though, that I feel like was amazing was their boss timing around those warheads. Whether or not that was, next level calculation there, but I feel like it's a pretty you know, it's pretty easy to keep track of the timer in that situation. So timing the boss with the double warhead around one where you know the warhead cycle is going to be greater than the 2 you see in the first phase, I feel like it was actually really well done for them, though it's not the normal we're going to end this game fast. Everything else about their play and that comp with the double isolation for the core kind of catered towards it. So I feel like that was... I still feel like there's a lot of credit to be given towards CE and how that played out, even though, again, BTG, we saw that they went in with a game plan, but it was easily kind of punished.
Yeah, and CE played a very